So hi everybody, and welcome back. And so the painting continues. I kept studying the painting most of the afternoon, and I decided there were certain components of this painting that I liked and wanted to see more of. So what I decided to do is stay with that shape, that curve coming through the piece, but really build on some of those areas. And the base layer, I decided I would keep that as almost a negative space at this point and just build some really dominant, beautiful colors in that kind of curvature wave design that's running through the piece naturally. So same palette, same paints, and those are in my description of this video. And what I decided was that I would create some quite bold, kind of shaped curves through the piece, following the line that the piece naturally gave me, and give it some really kind of a little bit of, I don't know what the word, like pizzazz, make it pop. And so I mixed up the same palette of colors, and I'm going to be building between those lines. And that's what you're seeing me do here. And it's interesting when I start building some kind of heavier application of the colors that it makes you, it made me realize just how great these colors truly are together. So my plan at the moment is to sort of create some bold curve of color through the piece. Now I am applying the second coat of these colors as onto cured resin. Now this resin that it's being applied to has been left to cure for about 8 hours. So it feels like it's not quite cured. It's getting there, but it's not quite cured. And that's a great time to apply a second layer because, for instance, if I was to complete layer 1 and then come back 4 days, a week later, and want to apply a brand new layer of resin over it, the shiny surface would be problematic to the new layer. It would have, it technically, essentially wouldn't have anything to grab to. So being that this resin has only been curing for about 8 hours, it has, if I was to really kind of push my now into the resin, I would make some kind of impression on it. So it's not quite cured. And so when I apply these extra layers of resin onto that, it will become one solid piece. It will adhere. Now, you can put multiple layers onto a resin painting and have a great deal of time between the layers. There's no issue. You just have to prep the painting to take another layer, be it second, third, whatever layer it is. And if you ever find yourself where you do want to come behind and create a layer over the top of a previous layer, and it's been a couple of days, maybe 4, 5, 6 days, or 2 weeks, whatever it might be, what you can do, and I do this, is lightly sand the top of the painting. And what you do, excuse me, what you do is you kind of rough the surface. By roughing the surface, the second layer or the new layer will adhere to it. So you lightly sand, and you don't have to go crazy and like really sand the painting. You're just going to create a rougher surface throughout the painting. And when you've done that, you can take a damp cloth and just wipe it down and make sure you get all the dusty residue, and you're back to, although it's not, the finish has been roughed up, it's clean, because obviously if there's any dust still on that piece and you would adhere a new layer, that dust is now going to be part of that new layer. The other thing to mention is, and I haven't done this in any of the videos yet, but I will do in the future, is if you're familiar with acrylic pours, where you use different, I guess they're solvents, you use different solutions to create effects, such as silicone oil, that you can actually use those in resin. The only issue is, and they give great effects, by the way, and I will show that in a future video for definite, but they give beautiful effects, so they're really worthwhile. However, they do come at a cost, and that is that when the piece cures, what you added to the resin will more than likely come to the surface. So when you finish that layer, you have to, what I normally do is I kind of wipe it down with sort of dish detergent in some warm water. And then I come behind and I clean it again with some 91% alcohol and just wipe it down and get it really clean. That will lift those additives off the piece, and then you would have to come behind and do a clear coat. But that is definitely something for a future video. I just wanted to kind of give you a little knowledge share that you can use silicone oil in resin, and I have done, and I will do that in a future video. So what I'm doing now is I'm using exactly the same palette as my previous painting that I did, and there is a video here on YouTube on my channel of the painting that I created called Passion, and it was a beautiful painting, and I'm using the same palette, but with this one I didn't want this painting to be subtle because I wanted it to have some kind of bearing on the previous painting I did with this palette called Passion 1. So, which was quite dramatic in the finished painting. So I wanted to have some of that kind of interest in this painting too. I didn't want it to be, I wanted it to have some kind of, I wanted some subtlety to it, which I didn't really have on the first one. But I also didn't want to make it so understated it didn't look right with the other painting. I wanted them to have some kind of relationship to each other. So as you can see, I'm starting to build a new layer over the top of the first layer. And I'm using the colors that I used from the original palette. Because if you had watched the first layer of this painting, and you can check it out, it's up to you, but basically the first layer was a dirty pour. All the colors that you're seeing me apply right now were in that first layer, but because of the Mayron gold, which it naturally kind of moves to the top layer of the resin, you can't see the colors. They're embedded under the Mayron gold. Now, what I found out about Meliron Gold is it does actually create a beautiful finish, but it just took over, and I ended up with what essentially was a background. And I really enjoy these colours a lot, so I'm almost tempted to keep going on the same palette, but I'm going to give it a rest for a while after this painting, and maybe try something a little bit different. And you'll see that I'm applying, when I want to put down quite a bold amount of paint, resin and paint, I can pour it straight from the cup onto the piece and guide it across. And I get kind of a broad line. If I want to create effects and have some reactions, I can actually apply the resin with a popsicle stick. And you've just been seeing me do that. And that's pretty, it's a pretty good technique for applying accent colors in resin art. And I'm still applying colors. It's interesting when you're putting fine colors on. It buys you time. This is how I see it. As I'm applying my resin and I'm putting it down in subtle areas, all the time, I'm looking at the whole piece as a whole and trying to figure out what is it I'm trying to achieve? What is the composition? What is the eye going to follow when it looks at this painting? So sometimes I can spend a few minutes applying these finer kind of accent colors. One, I want them anyway, because resin art is very reliant to a degree on layering or having various products within resin, solutes as we call them, actually close to each other. So mica powder budding up against and kind of overlapping onto acrylic paint budding up and having some kind of relationship to spray paint, for instance, in resin. And that's what you want, because they all have a different kind of qualities and weight attached to them. So some will fight to be at the surface and some will naturally go below. So, and you want that relationship because that creates the effects. And it's interesting, that Meliron Gold, because although it overtakes the painting, and it definitely does, and it creates some great effects, so it is a worthwhile product to use. But what I noticed is, and you can see I've put some gold Meliron down, it is very beautiful color. That metallic gold Meliron powder is really stunning in its own right. So I'm going to brave on with the product because I do enjoy using it, and I definitely enjoy the end result. And this wooden panel is 18 inches by 24 inches. Most of my panels I purchased from a company online. They do have stores in certain towns, and the company's called Dick Blick Art Supplies. And I buy their unprimed wooden panels. And I don't know how many I've used. I've used an awful lot of them, and I'm very pleased with them. And the reason why I'm using a wooden panel compared to a canvas is because resin, as it cures, well, essentially it has some weight. So that's problematic on a normal canvas right there. But also, as it cures, it expands and contracts. There's a lot of movement within the curing process. And I've heard, and I haven't experienced this, but I heard that canvases have actually broken as they cured. I haven't had that, but I have used regular artist canvases and had that kind of pulling away from the sides and pooling in the middle, which obviously just really made it, the end product was just so disappointing. And that's a real shame, because if you live in the US, Michaels do phenomenal deals on their artist canvases, but they don't really hold up to resin art and mixed media. Well, I'm sure there must be a way to make them, but I've not found out what it is. And, I do sell my artwork, and I would be devastated if somebody purchased a piece from me to only go on to have problems. So I work on the basis that, if you want to create a beautiful piece of art, then you should put it on a really good structure. And these wooden panels are definitely, they're up to the job. And Dick Blick, who I get those panels from, around the holidays, they do some incentives as far as pricing, and they do free shipping. I think it's over about $60. So so some of these panels are pretty big, so the free shipping is a really great deal. So I'm just building on the design that's already there. And at the end of the video, I will share some close-ups of the piece. And I've been getting a lot of feedback via YouTube, which I really like to get comments on my videos. And I definitely am learning from some of the comments I'm receiving, and kind of trying to adapt and accommodate some of what people would like to see more of. But, I do plan more videos in the future. So if there's a certain color palette that you would like me to attempt, I'm up to the challenge to a degree. And I'm going to do I really want to do a couple of videos for resin art for beginners, and maybe tackle some smaller pieces that are just a little bit more simplistic in their nature, so that and yet give good results. So watch out for those two, guys, and I'll make sure in the description that it states it's resin art for a beginner. that red. That is such a beautiful color. Be sure to check out my colors in my description. It's interesting because when I applied that red in the original painting, I knew immediately it was just a stunning color. So if you want to know what paint that is, please check out in the description. So what I decided here is I want some bold color. You know, there's a limit to how many kind of stripes or, well, sort of curved lines you can run through a piece. I want a little bit of drama, so I'm creating almost a negative space of the red right now, so that I have, which, you know, it's just an incredibly beautiful color, so that's good reason enough, I guess. And you can see that I was actually quite successful at pouring the red within the two curved lines with the use of pouring from a cup. So one of the good things about resin is that although it's a liquid, it doesn't run off too quickly. So I'm trying to think how I can explain it. The liquidity is not necessarily like fluid acrylics, so you do have more control. Now, when I torch it in a minute, which I have to do, I'm going to have to be a little bit careful at kind of a little bit of torch, a little bit, you know, stop, start kind of motions with it, because with the heat, I may risk dispersing it out a little bit, and then I'll lose some of my definition of the beautiful lines that I'm running through. And if you do put a bold color between two designs, like I have here, and you did run over and kind of blur out the edge because of run over, you can come behind like I am now and just redefine it with running that color back through. And I'm doing mine with a popsicle stick there, and but you can build your lines back up essentially. And that, when it cures, there's some real benefits to doing that anyway, and that is that as it cures, the piece continues to interact, and so I may come back and find a couple of new subtle designs have happened that I didn't imagine were going to be there, but I'm rarely disappointed. And this painting's now finished, and I was looking at it this morning after it cured overnight, and it really is very beautiful. I don't know that I've ever created a painting with these kind of earth colors. It's the gold makes it stunning, but the colors themselves are almost quite organic. So it's a real contrast with those kind of more natural earth tones with kind of the popping of the gold, which just the two together, it's like a contradiction that just works. So I'm very pleased with that. Now resin, whilst I'm painting, there's many manufacturers of resin on the market now, and they've definitely kind of switched a little bit to, the artist community. The resin I'm using in this piece is Envirotex Light. I do like this resin, and it seems to give me real workability time, about 20 to 30 minutes, because once you get to like 30 minutes, your resin starts to go into its true first curing phase, and it can become almost like a gel. And once it becomes a gel, it's very difficult to maneuver and make any kind of manipulations. You can definitely do some subtle kind of layering over the top like I am with the gold, but you can't really move it around, because if you try, it'll almost move as one and create kind of, it almost becomes bumpy. It just doesn't work, and I've ruined a piece before now trying to kind of tilt and move a piece that really was already in its curing phase. And I can't tell you how relaxing I find painting with resin. I find it incredibly rewarding. And I'm getting some really great feedback on my videos, so if you are enjoying my videos, please subscribe to my channel. The number of subscribers to me is very interesting. First of all, there is some benefits to subscribing, and that is when I post a new video, I believe you get, it gets into your kind of homepage, into your feed, so you don't miss it. But also, it gives me some kind of positive reinforcement that there is a need for this type of video. I notice with a lot of the, I know I've sat and spent many an hour watching fluid painting and resin painting, but I think there is a need for videos that go more into the instructions and mixing the products and just maybe more the technical side of the art form. And I do have a Facebook group. It's a closed group, so when you find it, if you want to join, you have to request to be allowed to be a member. And I have about 3,000 members right now, and that group is called Resin and Mixed Media Art with Tina Kamala. So please check that out and join the group. And the group has a interesting mixture of artists from truly basic, new to the art form, through to intermediate, and even some members are, making a living off of this art form. So everybody's welcome. And what appears as the base color, the kind of mid-brown goldy color in between, you know, the base is incredibly shimmery. So it's very difficult to see the true beauty of that layer, but it's actually a stunning back layer as such. Achieved with exactly the same colors as you're seeing me apply now, which is quite amazing. So here I am torching the piece. Torching removes any air bubbles from the piece, and I'm going to bring you in for a close-up. But stay tuned, because the last and final layer will go on next. It's very interesting. Look how beautiful that is. But look how beautiful this is. This is just gorgeous, without a doubt. It's intense. It's just stunning. See, there's the layering.